Helen of Foregates by Ethel Carnie, Chapter 10. A Chain of Flesh. As Helen turned from hanging up her cloak, Dave faced her. "Where's ta been?" he snarled. Helen's eyes did not move from his. They were watching each other like animals that do not trust each other enough to dare glance away for a moment. "I've been out," she told him, with cutting brevity. It would be useless and humiliating to avoid a quarrel. Weary as she was, she took up the challenge. From the bed in the corner came a cackling laugh. "Oh, out," the old man mimicked, watching darker passions sweep over Dave's face. He had been promising Dave more share capital if he turned the screw a little more. The savage beauty of Helen's eyes were like a laugh at Dave. Terror, defiance, murder, thoughts he could bring there. But two things never, appeal or love. She was strong. He had a delight in trying to break her. She was no reed, but a bar of tempered steel. "Where's ta been?" he repeated. There was finality in his voice. His hand shot out, catching her wrist in a vice-like grip. "Now, where has ta been?" he urged, smiling. "Tell thy devoted husband where thou's been the livelong day, whilst he's toiled and moiled and pined for thee, or shall I gie just another twist?" "For thy loving husband," spluttered the old man, pulling at the bedclothes, his frame shaken by the silent laughter. He was thinking of the dark scenes that had been enacted in that kitchen. A little moan of pain came from Helen's lips. "Not yet." There was demonic pleasantness in Dave's query. He moved his thumb upon the spot that communicated with the nerve centre. Agony paled Helen to death hue, but she was silent. After that moan, she had set herself not to cry out. Then Fielding Day let out an oath, for the desperate woman had set her teeth in the flesh of his hand as she half sank with pain upon her knees. The blood of a savage race surged into Dave's face. A woman had bitten him. A woman, the insult of it. His slave had turned upon him. He looked down at the blood on his hand, the blood she had tasted. From the bed came the laughter of the old man. The wind shouted defiance outside. "I'll show thee for them tricks. I'm not Martin. I'm not one to run away from a woman." The words came between his teeth clenched with pain. He grabbed a handful of black hair and began to drag her to her feet. Two pale hands pressed against the roots to numb the pain. The wild eyes stared upwards into his. Hatred was in them, but no appeal. "I'll break thee in," said Fielding. A fiercer throb shot through his wrist. His face was livid. With his free hand he reached a stick from a corner, still dragging her with him. They jostled amongst the empty milk kits yet to be scalded. She looked upwards at the stick with horror at the insult. To be beaten like a dog. She had been beaten before, but not with a stick. Of course, she could go away, leave Foregates, and thereby confess to Foregates and to Martin Scott the fact that she was not happy. Happy? She'd never thought to be happy. But to be beaten with Martin's old stick. She looked at the stick. No, she would never leave Foregates. Never. They should never know. Besides, this was her place. Hell, maybe, but still her place. She would not be handed out of it. Besides, she had only 5 shillings. Martin Scott had run away from Foregates. She would fight her fight out here, go down here maybe. And the farm, it was her birthright. If only the man would strike and have done with it, perhaps it would not hurt very much. She closed her eyes against the sight of the stick, against the sacrilege of it. It was her naked soul that the stick would wheel. Like an animal, she feared a stick, feared it in every corner of her heart. And that stick, Martin's stick. "Field," she breathed. Her eyes were still closed. With the cruelty in him, he was not striking at once. "Ask him for mercy," he jeered. "She doesn't like the stick, Dad." Old Mason laughed. There was a gleam in his deep-set eyes. "The harder thou strikes, the more thou'll be loved," he said. "It's the devil's truth, Field. He. They be like dogs, like dogs." He stared away and beyond the two, yet his eyes missed no single detail of what was going on before him, though, like a companion picture, behind it he saw the heights of the Corplestones and another Helen beside him, faltering the words that were betrayal. The pale beauty was like hers. The eyes were the same as these staring upwards with almost mad repulsion against the stick, Martin's old stick, made from a 50-years-old ivy vine. "I'll not be struck with it, Field," she whispered. "I'll not. I'll kill myself if that touches me with it." Long shudders of physical loathing against the contact of the stick ran through her. Fielding Day laughed down at her. "If she talks wild like that, Dad," he said, "we'll have to send her to that big house in its own grounds with rails round." Their dual laughter rang out. With a sudden movement she sprang to her feet, though Day still held her by the coils of her hair, and the wrench of it was torture. Spectre pale in her black attire, and almost spectre thin, she looked at them, and whereas you'd send. Vibratingly her voice mocked them. A frail body that could be bruised and broken, she granted them. With every cell of it shuddering back from the stick, she denied them all else. Strong once more, her soul girded for the blow to come by the bitterness of their taunts. A fiercer cruelty shot into the eyes of the younger man as he heard the mockery that answered their mockery. The mockery of the soul against what they could do to the body. The mockery such as had sustained heroes, martyrs, and the pioneers of all ages. "Thou'rt flayed of the stick," said Fielding, "and thou'rt gonna get it, unless thou says where thou's been. Come, if there'd been Martin now, thou'd ha' been slopping and slavering in his ear-hole. Where thou'd been, if thou'd had the heart to leave him in peace a minute. Now out with it." Even while she nerved herself for the insult to come, with a maddening picture in her mind, confused though it were, of how she would have returned from a walk in the snowy solitudes to tell of it to a faithful Martin, she wondered why feeling should refer twice to Martin at such a time. Then the stick had touched her cheek, giving her a sickening, shuddering feeling. Her flesh shrunk away from it, with the insane passion that a savage will feel, knowing it a desecration. It was next door to Martin Scott beating her, whilst he laughed at her. That quivering woman's flesh shrunk away from it, even as it shrunk from Fielding's brutish kisses, more intolerable than blows. He looked down into the hell of her look, had discovered another means to punish her. Foot and fist she had grown used to. Now he had found Martin's stick. The primitive in her, akin to the beast under the settle, loathed, feared, and hated a stick. Another thought ran through her brain, galvanizing her from the stupor of horror the touch of the stick had brought. "If thou strikes me where folk can see, Field," she panted, "I'll have thy blood." She was a white incarnation of terror and pride. "Thou could say 'twere cupboard door, 2 lovely black eyes," he said, just switching past her cheek again, making the air sing. "I'll know and lie," she said, but she cowered at the thought of apologizing and lying openly to Foregates. There was murder in her glance. Her eyes swept the table for some missile. Fielding Day laughed. As her glance went over the table she saw her father, the bed shoot with his laughter. Then her cruelty shot into her eyes. Any reference of her mother always went through him with the hurt of a sword. "My mother had turned in her grave to see you, sat without a word to say," she said. The old man started. "Mention thy mother to me," he snarled threateningly. "You cannot strike me now," taunted Helen. Then her face flushed. "I'm sorry," she said. You were making me vicious as yourselves." The voice died away into the lament of the wind. "I can always strike thee," said old Mason. Never forget it. Swish! The stick whistled past her head. Then the old man started again, a smile of gloating triumph overspreading his face in place of the savage gloom it had worn for a moment. A terrified woman's scream rung through the dark house, a scream not born of physical anguish, but of fear and indignation against the threat of a deeper insult. It pierced the silence, weirdly, echoing along the dim, cold corridor that led up to the room that had been Martin Scott's, that led up to the room that had seen Millie Mason laid between the pallid, flickering candles. The old man heard that sound as a high priest of Malc might have heard the shriek of a belated sacrifice ascend vainly to the skies. In his glee, he leaned down over the bedside, patting the dog. The caress from that hand was so unusual that the beast whined with terror. Helen was not noticing her father. Through every corner of her brain her own scream rang. The rest was Fielding Day's countenance, that of a tamer of wild things, and above her, mesmerizing her, the stick. Martin's stick, the stick he had found as they came home from the fair on that blossomy, moonlit night, which was surely part of some other life. In the back of her brain, behind the fear, was a curious cold wonder if she would go mad were she beaten oft enough with that stick, as some were driven crazy in the olden times by strange tortures. While she knew with shuddering expectancy that he had not struck her yet, he had only touched her cheek, then whirled it past her head, and still threatened. Therein lay the cruelty of the man. She was getting like Martin who had run away, afraid not of what was, but of what might be. They were breaking her, changing her, strive as she might. She knew it in this moment. They had made her scream like any tame woman of Foilgates who feared hell and death and judgment and was good from fear. They were making her a coward. The long body quivered with fear and loathing at such a thought. A coward. Looking upwards, she saw the laugh in Fielding's eyes. She took possession of herself. Strike, she taunted. Strike. Something that the stick had made her forget came back to her, assured the low sobbing of the wind over the snow, soft as a child's cry now. That crowning indignity might serve as a barricade against these lesser ones. She faced Fielding. She had unexpectedly found a weapon. Strike, she repeated with a laugh. And when thou strikes, mind thou only strikes me, beast, and not that which is thine. Thine, all thine, none of mine, mind thee. If thou hurts it, it may serve thee as I do, now, some day. Remembering the barricade, she laughed again, a very savage, and spat upon him. Day's arm was raised to strike. There was murder in his eyes. Then her words suddenly gave him a lightning shock. He stood, his arm falling to his side, staring at her in bewilderment. "What's ta mean, she-cat?" he asked. "Strike me," jibed Helen. Old Mason, in puzzling disappointment, was trying to solve the mystery of the change in the scene. "What's ta mean?" asked Day. He jerked her to her feet, but in such a manner as not to hurt her too much. A fear was written on his face. "Strike me, and mayhap thy son will curse thee for it," she flung at him. The simple words might have been a thunderbolt dropped on the silence of the kitchen. The old man had raised himself in his bed. He laughed. "A child, a cherubim, an olive branch, to come here, to this house." He fell back heavily, his brow like thunder. "Olive branch," echoed Helen. At her tone both men started, so full of concentrated misery and hatred it sounded. "Olive branch?" She met their eyes. Her own conveyed a message that electrified them. That which would have melted some other had enraged her, savage that she was, barbarian who felt only that hers was a motherhood without meaning. Conceived in hatred, born in hatred, suckled on hatred, she said. 'Twill come into the world like a fiend, my curse upon it failed, and all on it that's thine. She went a rushing cloud of black across the kitchen and into the shadows of the corridor, through the little window where Martin Scott had let the wind blow on him after his blasphemy and invocation of the saints to save him from her spell. She saw the stars shining, as she had often seen them through the boughs of the yew tree. Then Fielding's voice rang after her. "We'll call it Martin," he shouted mockingly. She returned and stood in the doorway regarding him. "Why dost thou speak so often of Martin?" she asked. "He's deein', that old lover of thine that ran away," he said, whilst the old man chuckled. "I've seen one as seen him out yon, and Thirth'll be a top o' him. Aye, he'll be pushing next year's daisies up, Martin Scott will, in spring. Turning religious too, they say, but not till he's supped deep o' life, aye, dregs and all. A wreck he is, Martin Scott. We'll call Kid after him, for old time's sake. Happen thou'll warm it in thy breast then. Aye, Martin's finished. Thou'll ne'er clap in on him again." "I shall," said Helen. "He's coming back." For the second time that night she electrified the two men. "Coming back?" they echoed. "To Fourgates?" "Aye," she answered. "Where else should he come to? Don't folk always creep back to thee where they've loved?" Fielding, Day, and Helen looked into each other's eyes. The old man was looking at them both with fierce satisfaction. The child he had feared was to be another torment to Helen. Her old lover was coming back. The old struggle might begin again. Anyhow, she would see Martin die, know he was dying, as the leaves fell, and be unable to breathe a word of regret, would have to act as if he were any other Fourgates man. On the rack of the boss, bearing life that she had cursed, with the tide of death creeping up round her lover, she must let him be washed out without a word. She was a Fourgates woman. Helen was regarding Day in wonderment. She had caught a note in his voice new to her. Then she started. "Thou'rt ne'er jealous of a deein' chap without brass, a coward that ran away?" she gibed. Then she saw by the look in his eyes that he also had received the shock. "Jealous?" he growled. But she knew the truth, even as he perceived it in that moment. She turned and walked away into the shadow of the corridor, away from that horror. Her very lips blanched. Not content with her body, with the carcass Martin Scott had left behind him, the tyrant now wanted the very essence of her, the soul of her, the love of her, that which had died on that evening when she ran down the hillside, calling vainly on a coward's name. Her body he had made his. After a long struggle, he would find out that she was only that, a body with certain physical repulsions and fears, a thing that ate and slept and walked about, counterfeiting life, but in reality dead these 3 years, the soul of her gone these 3 years, and only to be invoked like a spirit passed away before its time violently by spells, such as Martin's stick, Martin's name. Martin she hated most of all. Her father had brought her up like a wildcat, yet teaching her to respect Fourgates, to give it power over her. Love he had never given her. Fielding Day had tortured her, kicked the corpse Martin had left behind, stirring it to the malignity that the dead might feel at being disturbed. Martin Scott had loved her and left her. This was the worst insult. She hated him for it. Like a Fourgates woman, she would hide hate as love beneath a matronly calm. She sat in the dusk of the room that had been Martin's, looking out on the stars. A black figure was silhouetted against the window. Coming back to thee. The little words fell on the vault-like gloom with wild ecstasy. Then there was silence. "Some day, Martin," she said, repeating words spoken half in jest under the yew tree. Some day thou'll beg for a kiss, and I'll let thee dee without it. Fielding Day's steps came along the passage. Open this door, he demanded. It's no and fast, answered Helen, out of the heart of the blackness. It's stuck, he said. There was a note of hesitation in his voice. He entered the room, sitting down on the bed. He could see a woman's outline, black against the stars, weirdly beautiful. Thou's got to have that child, curse it as thou will, he said out of the darkness. She laughed, a low vibrating laugh. It's the inevitable, she said. Not allers, said the man. It's the inevitable, she told him again, with elemental passion and disgust, as if she'd shoot something from her. Besides, it's all her peace with rest. Thou's got to care for it, and for me, he said. She laughed as if she heard one commanding the tides. What's thy price, he said. Everybody has one, some go cheap, some go dear. What's thy price? The price of what thou's ne'er given me. I've got no price, said the woman. Thou'd ha' given thyself once, said Fielding, with that mixture of sneering brutality and tradesman's coldness. But Martin wouldn't have thee. Most folk had taken at their own valuation. Even God, they say, won't ha' given stuff. Thy price, Helen, the price of what thou chucked at Martin and got back in face. There was silence. Then she rose, a figure a black pillar against the star-littered window space. Take me away for Fourgates, Field, she said fiercely. That's my price. He went towards her swiftly. What for? He asked. I want. A voice trailed into the silent darkness. Thou wants to start afresh, to forget, like Martin did, said the tramp boss. Well, I can't pay price. I promised thy feyther always to stop in Fourgates. There was silence again. He was frowning at the stars. He had come to the place where he stood between two gods, the god of love, the god of ambition, serving the god of hatred. To go up he must torture the thing he loved after himself, not before, for so he could only love, but it was sufficient to shake him. In that moment when she had tortured him with being jealous of a man almost dead, a man at the bottom, he had realised love, a savage antagonism to having this barrier thrust across the path of his ambition rose in his heart. He began to struggle, even as Martin Scott had begun to struggle. Martin had got away. Fielding Day was stronger, but Fielding Day was more of a savage, less of a complex modern. It's too high a price, he said. I can't pay it. Thy father wants to stay in Fourgates, and it pays me better to suit him. Anyhow, thou'rt mine. I pays 7 and 6pence for thee. He strode nearer, taking her in his grasp. I like summat wild, he said. He laughed in his old brutal way. His lips neared hers. Then, from the window, he saw the starshine falling on her face. That strange beaten feeling that had been his as she taunted him with jealousy came on him again. He let her go. The futility of it was borne upon him. Suit thyself, he said with an assumption of callousness. He went out, banging the door. Thy feyther wants thee, he called, some minutes later. Helen trailed downstairs. I want some bread and milk, growled Mason. He was exhausted physically, lying back on his pillows. She made it, put the napkin under his chin and fed him with a spoon. Afterwards she washed his hands and face. All the time his eyes glared fury at her. His helplessness was borne in upon him. The something he had not understood in the scene between Helen and Day haunted him, bringing the old fear. Field, he breathed. His tool approached. Kiss her, he grinned. He stared up into Day's face. To his excited imagination there was something of the shattered look it had worn, as he had once mentioned his mother. Kiss thy loving wife, he commanded. Day took Helen by the shoulders and raised her face to his. The wincing look met him out of her eyes. He kissed her in his brutal way. Mason was watching, the fear going. Behind his back, Day's hand was twitching, as it had done once when the mill had lost an order. Helen shook the old man's pillow. "Is it comfortable?" she asked gently. "Comfortable as hell," he gasped. As she was bending over him, he struck at her breast. She put her hand to it, in agony for a moment. "I'd forgotten the kits," she said, ignoring the hurt. "Thou might have washed 'em for me, Field, being such a loving husband." "I could kill her when she bears with me," Mason confided to Day when she'd gone to bed. "She makes allowance for me now. Why?" Day shook his head. He was back in his figures. As Mason watched the old lust of profits creep into the man's face, he sank back on his pillows and slept. The fear slept with him.